In West Africa, there's a country where 1 in 3 residents believes the spirits of the dead control the living, sorcerers cure cancer with spells, and curses kill people in reality. Togo is a country the size of the Moscow region, sandwiched between Ghana and Benin, where voodoo isn't just a tourist attraction, but an official religion recognized by the government. There's no law prohibiting witchcraft, because more than half of the 9 million residents regularly turn to priests for help with any problems. In the capital, Lomé, there are special markets where monkey skulls, dried snakes, leopard bones, and human body parts are openly sold for magical rituals. The Akadasewa market in Lome is the largest market for magical ingredients in West Africa. Sorcerers from dozens of countries come here to purchase special ingredients. Leopard and crocodile skulls, dried monkey heads, predator claws, snake skins, and even human skeletal parts are displayed openly on the stalls. Vendors claim that each item possesses special powers. Crocodile bones grant power over people, snake skulls protect against enemies, and plant ashes attract money. Tourists are strictly discouraged here. The vendors believe the presence of non-believers weakens the magical power of the goods, angers the spirits, and can bring a curse upon the entire market. From the 16th to the 19th centuries, the coast of Togo was one of the main centers of the slave trade in Africa, where more than 2 million people were forcibly transported. European traders called this region the Slave Coast because local rulers actively sold captives from warring tribes to the Portuguese, French, and Dutch. In the coastal town of Anejo, underground chambers where people were held before being loaded onto ships still stand, chained together 30 abreast. The slave trade officially ended only in the mid-19th century, but its consequences are still felt today as ethnic groups clash over long-standing grievances. In 1884, the German official Gustav Nachtigall signed a treaty with local leaders and declared Togo a German protectorate. Over 30 years, the Germans built railways, a port, schools, and hospitals, turning the tiny territory into a model colony they boasted to France and Britain. After World War I, Germany lost, and the victors divided Togo between themselves as spoils of war. France took the eastern half, Britain the western. The French portion became modern-day Togo, while the British portion joined Ghana, dividing the Iwi people into 2 countries and tearing apart families who hadn't seen each other for decades. In 1967, Army officer Nasingbe Ayadima staged a bloody military coup and seized power. Ayadima ruled for 38 years, banning all political parties except his own, assassinating opposition figures, and siphoning billions of dollars from the treasury into Swiss accounts. When the dictator died in 2005, the army immediately declared his son Faure Nasingbe president, grossly violating the constitution and ignoring the election results. Faure Nasingbe has ruled for 20 years now, turning Togo into a family business where all power, oil, ports, and phosphate mines belong to a single clan. Togo occupies only 57,000 square kilometers, smaller than the Moscow region. But this tiny sliver of land is home to 9 million people. The country stretches 600 kilometers from north to south, and at its narrowest point, it's only 50 kilometers wide, a distance that can be crossed on foot in a day. This microscopic territory is home to 42 different ethnic groups, each with its own language, traditions, religion, and ancient tribal customs. The Iwu in the south fish and trade along the coast, while the Cabre in the north herd cattle in the savannah. These peoples have been warring over resources and despising each other for centuries. Togo is among the 20 poorest countries on the planet. The average person earns less than $2 a day and lives in a mud hut without electricity. Life expectancy is 61 years, and people die en masse from malaria, tuberculosis, and dysentery, which are treated with standard antibiotics within a week. More than half the population cannot read or write because schools are sorely lacking, and those that exist charge fees families cannot afford. In rural areas, there is no clean water or sanitation. Children drink from polluted rivers infested with parasites and suffer from cholera, dysentery, and hepatitis year-round. Every year, hundreds of containers of electronic waste from Europe and America, broken computers, phones, refrigerators, and televisions arrive at the port of Lomé. Officially, Western companies call this humanitarian aid, but in reality, 90% of the equipment is dead and goes straight to toxic open-air landfills. Local residents dismantle electronics with their bare hands, burning plastic circuit boards to extract copper, inhaling toxic black smoke containing lead, mercury, and dioxins. The soil around these landfills is contaminated with heavy metals for centuries to come, and children play among batteries and microchips, developing chronic blood diseases and lung cancer. In Togo, every third child between the ages of 5 and 14 works. Almost 500,000 children across the country are forced to carry sacks and dig the earth instead of going to school. Children toil in quarries under the scorching sun, carry 50-kilogram sacks at markets, and work 14 hours a day on cocoa plantations for a single bowl of rice. Thousands of children are sold into slavery by their parents to traffickers who take them to neighboring countries for $30 to $50 because their families cannot afford to feed them. The government has passed well-meaning laws against child labor, but no one enforces them. Police officers are paid $2 a day and turn a blind eye to any violations. Togo's soil contains enormous reserves of phosphate, a mineral essential for producing fertilizer, without which half the planet would be left without crops. Togo is the world's 5th largest phosphate exporter, annually selling over 3 million tons to Europe, China, India, and other countries for billions of dollars. But all the profits from these minerals end up in the pockets of the ruling Nasingbe dynasty and the Chinese corporations that bought up the deposits for next to nothing. China built a modern port, roads, and a power plant in Togo in exchange for gaining complete control over phosphate and other resource extraction for the next 50 years. Although half of Togo's population is officially Christian or Muslim, almost all of them simultaneously practice voodoo and worship ancestral spirits. Voodoo priests are considered intermediaries between the worlds of the living and the dead. They perform bloody rituals involving animal sacrifices and enter trances to receive messages from the spirits. People believe that illness and misfortune are punishment from angry ancestors for breaking traditions, so they first visit a sorcerer with a sacrifice, then a doctor. Every village has sacred groves where cutting down trees and hunting are strictly prohibited, as they are inhabited by ancient spirits who protect the community from harm. Togo's capital, Lomé, is built on a narrow sandbar between the Atlantic Ocean and a lagoon, at the most vulnerable point to floods and storms. 2 million people live in Lomé, almost a quarter of the country's population, who migrate here from rural areas in search of work and end up in slums. Modern glass and concrete skyscrapers built with Chinese loans line the city center, but just a kilometer away, tin shacks with no water or electricity appear. The capital's main disaster is coastal erosion. The ocean takes 5 meters of beach from the city every year, and in 20 years, the waves will flood the central districts. Football is the only area where tiny Togo has achieved international recognition. The national team has qualified for the African Cup of Nations twice and played in the World Cup. The country's most famous footballer, Emmanuel Adebayor, who played for Arsenal and Real Madrid, earned tens of millions of dollars and founded a charity in his home country. In 2010, armed terrorists attacked the Togo national team bus on the border with Angola, shooting the driver and the team doctor with automatic weapons. Following this tragedy, the team did not play international matches for a year, and several players retired due to post-traumatic stress disorder and depression. French remains the only official language in Togo, although less than 40% of the country's population speaks it fluently. All laws are written exclusively in French, schools teach in French, and judges conduct trials in the language of the former colonizers who left 60 years ago. Togo still pays France millions of dollars annually for the right to print its own currency, the CFA franc, which is tightly pegged to the euro. This financial dependence means Togo cannot pursue an independent economic policy and is obligated to coordinate its state budget with officials in Paris. Over the past 30 years, Togo has lost more than 60% of its tropical forests due to massive logging for firewood and clearing land for crops. Soil erosion is turning fertile land into barren desert. Rivers are drying up and disappearing, and wild elephants and antelopes haven't been seen in the country for over 20 years. The Atlantic coastal waters are polluted by industrial waste from phosphate plants and sewage. Fish stocks are critically low, and fishermen are retreating hundreds of kilometers out to sea. The government doesn't allocate a cent to environmental protection because the dictatorship has far more pressing concerns: maintaining power, suppressing protests, and stealing funds. Togo is a classic example of Africa's greatest paradox, a country with colossal natural resources, where the population lives in medieval poverty and dies of disease. Phosphate reserves worth billions of dollars lie underground. The coastline is ideal for tourism, and the tropical climate allows for 3 harvests a year without much effort. But rampant corruption, a hereditary dictatorship, and ruthless exploitation by former colonizers have turned Togo into one of the poorest places on the world map. The history of this small country clearly demonstrates that natural resources are no guarantee of prosperity when power and resources are controlled by a handful of thieves. If you found this interesting, subscribe to stay up to date with new episodes. Everything is short and to the point.